Or even just when you see me. Yeah.
You're not usually allowed, and you're on YouTube.
We're on YouTube. Wow. Fun Thursday. Get to hear go Gav how screwed up we are on the budget. When you get everything done, give me my whiteboard so I have something to talk about. Yeah. Grindcock. I guess I should stop eating while we're on the air. We're gonna be joining Facebook here pretty quick. Guess I should put my earplugs in. Maybe I could hear something. Wow. Pays to hook up the equipment so you can actually hear what's going on out there. There's this funky slide guitar music that comes in every Monday through Friday live at 5 on IE Newswire on Facebook and YouTube as we start off our broadcasting day as we do usually. Lots of fun stuff on that, lots of backtracking. That give me the little one too, because you'll just have to holler at me or something on the. And there was so much stuff, notations going on. There's the little board. Just so you know, this is my notes that I put together while Gavin Newsom is talking at his press conference. Yes, over there on today of that, explaining how you're going to get your tax raised. And your budget cuts, and after we beg, borrow, and steal and go through all reserves, we're still $10 billion short on K through 12 education. But we'll look at the great job I'm doing. I'm doing such a fabulous job on here, on that. Find me a picture of Gavin Newsom in a clown suit or something, Jesse. I mean, this guy, it's got to be the number one retard of all times. I mean, to come up with some of the stuff that he's... In fact, to me, I can see the desperation in him. He doesn't know what to do. It's like the L.A. County officials when they said the other day, oh, well, we're locking this county down till past August. Well, no, we're going to let you get curbside service in because everybody went apoplectic over that. Well, we're going to do curbside service, and then Garcetti is on the deal coming up on the, maybe is it, again, why can't you just say, we freaking blew it? You got to either admit most of these politicians got to admit to one or the other. We were incredibly stupid or we were lying to you all across the board. Neither which option is really great. But in this situation, or what we're dealing with now, it's probably about the only thing we've got, or the only thing that there. If we keep going with this dishonest policy of that, that's what I want. I forgot to do it, but fine. Yesterday, Gavin Newsom was doing a prop deal out in front of the Cal Fire, the fire trucks. And some trucker comes by and just starts blasting his horn for about 30 seconds going over that. Find that video. That video's got to be out there. I mean, just drowning out. And Gavin Newsom didn't know what to do for about 30 seconds. And then as a typical chicken bleep politician as he is, he hands it off to one of his staffers because he couldn't deal with the truck driver honking his horn. But find me that video. That's absolutely hilarious. That would happen yesterday on that. So you got the video of that? Oh, we'll play it. This is Gavin Newsom yesterday trying to use them as a prop.
Someone was very pleased with numbers comparing and contrasting the previous years. As it relates to that, why don't I just, with the noise, ask you before we come up talk.
See, now this is it. He doesn't even have guts enough to stand up and that. And look at his little dance that he's doing out there, and hands it off to the poor
fuel reduction.
The poor chief of the fire department of Cal Fire. That's how There's your guess. Run that again. I didn't pick up his little dance at the end of that as he's walking it off and handing it into the deal. Run that again. That's worth running again.
Numbers. I think someone was very
I
pleased
love
to hear
this
that,
truck driver. We got to find
numbers
this guy.
Comparing and contrasting the previous years. As it relates,
Now watch as he can't handle this and doesn't know what to do, so he cuts and runs.
asked you before we come
Look
up.
at this little dance. See his little dance there at the end as he's stepping off like, yeah,
So, fuel reduction.
yeah, this is what I take it as. This is what Gavin Newsom's telling the poor fire chief. Yeah, ha ha ha, I'm the big cheese. Now you got to deal with the crap that I've laid of that as I'm walking, and I'll just do you a little funky little dance as I'm walking off the stage on that because I don't know how to handle the situation because of the vast screw up that you've done to the 40 million residents of California on this. You told them there was going to be 1 million dying. What are we, 2,500? We're approaching 3,000 over this. Armageddon was coming. We're doing this. No, your stupid policies have got us with the worst decline, largest budget deficit that there ever was, ever will be, and probably ever will be for probably our lifetimes in the state of California. And he tried blowing it off, and I put the links on there in the Gavin Newsom video, and I'll see if I got them. Maybe I can send them to Jesse. But he said, right now we're looking at a $54 billion hole in the California state budget. He said, well, in the 09-010 budget, in the depth of our crisis, it was $60 billion. No, it wasn't. According to the New York Times, because I pulled the article up on there, it was $41 billion when the housing market crashed. So where in the heck do you come up with what sort of school did you go to where $54 billion deficit is smaller than a $41 billion deficit, which is the $54 billion deficit is the Gavin Newsom deficit that we have today that we're doing because of what you caused, and the $41 billion hole that was blown back in 09 and 010 at the depths of our housing crisis we had. I mean, he's going to steal from this is how we have a $19 billion deficit in their K through 12 education right now. This is how he's going to fix it. He's going to borrow $2.3 billion from the $1+ or $2 trillion unfunded pension fund. So he's going to drive the pension fund deeper in the hole, which is already technically, by most financial experts' opinion, bankrupt, cannot pay the obligations that that the politicians have promised, and he's going to borrow $2.3 million out of that fund, which is going down like a rock. You know what? The stock market's down. Real estate is down, which you guys invested heavily in CalPERS and CalSTRS. That fund is completely broke. You're stealing $2.3 billion out of that, trying to paper it over to prop up the schools. So maybe, even if you do pull the orders to lift the schools and let the kids back in, they might be able to turn on the electricity and open the doors. He went through all this of all the stuff's going on. We're gonna borrow or get from funds for the government about 30% of this of $54 billion. And we need Nancy Pelosi is going to bail us out of all this stuff. Yada yada. He didn't mention Trump one time on that, of all the federal funds and all the stuff he's whining and crying about, because he's probably on the... See if you can find the Trump tweet, Jesse, that said, he said, California, maybe you ought to stop, Gavin Newsom, you ought to start we're not bailing you out on all this stuff. It was a couple of days ago, I think. Trump's already said, yeah, we'll help you out on the COVID stuff, but we're not bailing you out on the bad decisions that you have made. And he knows he's in deep Blanken Bandini on this thing. He proposed this and we're going to do that. And he said, oh, we're only going to have 8% of tax increases or that. For most of you that don't know, California's income tax is paid, I think about 50% of it, or it's a very big percentage of it. 50%, 40% is paid by the top 1% earners. All of them across the board. Income taxes, corporate taxes, sales taxes are all down in about the 25% range. That's right now today. Just in, 8 weeks, 6 weeks really, since we started the lockdown order, revenues into the state have dropped 25%. Unemployment, as he said, is at where he predicted was going to stop at 25%, is already there and probably going to go lower. Gross domestic product has dropped across the board 26% in a month and a half. Yet you stand on your hands and will not open it up, or still putting in the draconian measures, says, maybe you can go to a store and pick up and delivery and this and that, and we're not at phase 2 and all that. Horseradish. What?
I think I found that tweet.
You found the tweet? Roll the tweet up there on the one, see if it's this one. Yes. This is Donald J. Trump on the Twitter machine. Why should the people and taxpayers of America be bailing out poorly run states like Illinois, as example, and cities, in all cases, Democrat-run, managed, when most of the other states are not looking for a bailout help? I'm open to discussing anything, but just asking. That was one of them. There's another one, too, that he did a couple of days ago to California, I think, specifically. But that was one about a week ago. He started the signal out. And he said on the press conferences that we have run that we're not, don't look to the federal government for bailing out your bad decisions that you made. And he was crowing about how great we were and we built all these reserves and all that. You built all this stuff on smoke and mirrors. You've been robbing Peter to pay Paul for many, many, many years. And then this is the first, let's say this is, maybe not the first government. This is the first economic turndown that I can believe, or that I can remember, that was not caused by something in the financial sector, like housing bubble, .com bubble, the run on the banks that started that of the overinflation in 1929, which started the Great Depression, and on, and most of our recessions have been tied to some sort of economic, whether it was bad policy, we did this, we overinflated the economy and did this. We've never had a stoppage, a slowdown of this, the total brakes putting on the economy ever that I can see documented, that this has been done. And this has been purely based on the decisions our politicians have made. There was no economic factor in this that caused this. We didn't roll too many loans out on that. We weren't, there weren't people on the .com deal back in 99 that were borrowing, scads of money and playing the stock market and overinflating that. And the tech stocks were, people were just bidding them up for the sake of bidding them up, and doing that we had a crash, and on and on and on. This is the first economic tragedy we've had, or crash, depression of that has come on purely based on the stupid actions of politicians. Because, again, the virus itself had basically little or no effect. Let's say we would have done nothing, which we can all debate whether that was a good policy or whether that would have worked or done nothing. If we would have done nothing, we would not be talking about these economic standards, and we would probably be talking about pretty close to the same amount of death rate, infection rate, everything else. We would have been humming along of that. Yes, it's a tragedy. It's very sad for the people that lose their lives in this stuff. But that's part of that. The bottom line of this, and the harsh reality of this, is we're all not getting out of this world alive. Somewhere, something's gonna wind up making us look at the roots of the grass versus the top of the grass on this stuff. So I mean, and it's a sad occasion, and we're not minimizing that. And Trump talked about it yesterday, I think, on part of his press conference, of the risk. Everything's risk involved in this stuff, and you got to weigh that part out. And if you don't, you will make incredibly bad decisions of doing this. And this is what I see. This is a problem of the mentality. Well, we got to save every life at every cost. Well, how are you going? If you're approaching it at that's an illogical position in my view, because how are you going to do that? Because you cannot save every life. You cannot save any life. Eventually, there does come that time when each and every one of us will no longer be here. And that's going to be off of something. Yeah, I'm glad, Stephen. I'm glad you found us on that. Brandon, hey, what's going on? Joseph, driving cars is pretty risky. Again, yes. We all don't drive cars because you could get killed in an automobile accident or much less anything else. I mean, there's all sorts of risky behavior. I mean, people don't become, probably one of the most riskiest things is become a commercial fisherman. Those guys have probably the highest death rate of any occupation. But because people die for the fish you eat, are you going to stop eating fish? Or people die, doing all sorts of jobs. Linemen that maintain the telephone lines that you are in electric lines and stuff. That's probably one of your, if not one or probably second behind commercial fishermen as being dangerous. Are we going to say, well, because, it's very risky to be a lineman, we shouldn't have any linemen to go up there and maintain, fix, or build our electric and phone grids and everything else that we enjoy every day? That's a static analysis. We make these choices every day. We know we're going to sacrifice so many commercial fishermen and linemen and police officers and construction workers and teachers and every other occupation, food service workers, hotel workers, cash register guys. How many people get shot, or at where they're in a store where they're taking the checkers taking your money. Happens all the time, but we don't do that. Look at the FedEx drivers in the the FedEx driver who had a gun, who got shot at but was able to return fire and did not die, versus the UPS guy thing that was a sitting duck when they did that. Are we going to say, well, we're no longer going to have our packages delivered because somebody could get shot over this? It's the stark reality of this stuff. And we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to have Dr. Kelly Victory on at the bottom of the hour, and we'll give us an update on that. But again, that's what physicians have to do this all the time. They have to assess the risk of that. And, they have to come to that conclusion, or sometime with the patient say there's nothing more we can do for you. And, there's all these different and very very poignant things that we have to do, and we're getting faced with a lot of realities of that. And the bottom line is the decisions, like the $54 billion hole we have in our California budget coming up, and all the other challenges we're having. We're having the challenges of trying to get our politicians to open up our businesses, our way of life, returning us to normal. The risk of continuing far outweighs the damages and the lives lost and the shortening of lives and everything else that's going to be caused by keeping on the current path that we're on. And if we don't do that, if we don't turn this around, this is really, really, really going to get ugly in my opinion on this stuff, because we're heading down that path of the getting close to the point of no return. You know, when they're talking about 50% of our restaurants are not going to come back, you know, look at the amount of economic impact this is on that. I think we got a caller on the line. Who's there?
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, you forgot to tell them about the jobs I had all my life. Heavy equipment. We killed a lot of guys during my time.
Yes. There isn't a job there that doesn't have some sort of danger to it. You hear the reports of somebody driving they were killed, or flip over a tractor or something, and you know what? I don't care how strong you are. You could lift weights like our former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger does. You're not going to hold up 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 tons of tractor if it rolls over on you.
Yeah, the last job I was on up there and going up Cajon Pass, we were putting that divider in the middle, and one guy got run over by a dump truck right there. They run right over and didn't even see him.
Yeah, are we going to stop building freeways? Are you going to stop building your houses and everything else? I mean, if you do the static analysis that every life we're going to save, every life we're going to save none of them, because we'll go back to the Neanderthal caveman days of that, and people still die doing there. So I mean, it's just. It boggles my mind sometimes the mentality of that of approaching this only looking at the emotional aspect of it. Yeah,
well, just like I say, you run a long time. You were running the motor grader and we're being checking grade and everything. While I've been on the job, I know 3 grade truckers that got run over by tractors. We're backing up and forth and back and forth and fast. I mean, you got to be alert out there.
Yes.
If you ain't going to pay attention, the attention's going to pay attention to you.
Yes, and it only takes once to do that, and that's why I say we've had this whole thing has probably been the biggest example of overreacting to something and then. Now you're seeing the damage of that, or just looking at that, or what people have considered in this stuff, or a lot of people have looked in that. I was looking at some of our deals, and I ran the Trump press conference yesterday where he said we got to get the schools open back up, and a lot of people wrote in or commented, we can't do that, children will die. What about the teachers? Well,
yeah. I know what you're saying. It's just like I said, the person that's alive, but 2 little boys had snotty noses and went to bed one night. When we woke up, one was dead. The live one.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is, you can't sit there and live it. You're going to destroy your whole economic education system, everything else, because maybe 1 or 2 people might die of this stuff as they're going to, and eventually it might not have been them, but as most of the studies that I have seen by the experts, and we can dig them out if we have to, the same amount of people are going to get infected and die or have complications or not going to have complications no matter what we did. The only thing this has done is maybe flattening the curve, maybe to and the whole idea was not to overwhelm our medical system so we didn't cause loss of life because somebody didn't get treatment, which we accomplished like 10 times over of that. So what is the justification for doing anything else? The odds are the same amount of people were going to be infected, have very mild symptoms, slight symptoms, very severe symptoms, and eventually passing away from this, whether you did nothing or nothing. So why all the draconian measures to shut everything down and try and ruin us, most of us, financially over this?
Well, I know what you're saying. Like everybody starts crying, you're going to kill grandma and stuff. I says, everybody gets a turn.
And that, yes. And we should. I mean, we knew from the very early on of this where the problem, those that were elderly, had underlying health conditions, they were the most at risk. Yeah, we should have put measures in place to protect those populations where we knew that this thing could potentially be deadly.
Well,
but for the vast majority, this was not the case. So it's a case of making everybody do something to protect a couple, and we're ultimately gonna have a much worse outcome in death, despair, and destruction than if we would have had some sane policies going on?
I know, just like when first week in January, when I thought I was having some kind of something going on, I couldn't breathe or nothing. Went over to the county hospital at 3 in the morning, and I thought maybe I was having a heart attack. And you've been around when you have a heart attack, you go in there, they check in. If you're having a heart attack, they rush right in there. And they horsed around with me, and they want to do more tests. While I was in there, people were laying up and down the halls with oxygen masks on and everything else. And in the room, they were trying to breathe. I mean, there was a lot of people the first week in January over the county couldn't breathe, including me. And I looked around, and I said, I ain't staying here because there's sick people here. I'm getting out of here.
Yeah. It's been well documented. The hospitals were saying, all across California, shall come out in November, December, January. They said, we're getting hit by this flu or something, and we don't know what the hell it is. We can't figure it out. Well, now we're figuring it out, and we didn't have a bunch of people dying and all this stuff back then when it appears that it first hit way back then. So it's
Well, the supervisors ought to go over there and check with the county hospital from January this year to last year, January. I don't think we had as many people in there having breathing problems as we had back in January. And this was the first week in January when I was there having a breathing problem.
Yeah, I know, because I happened to...
sick I got. You
remember this? The former January, I was in said county hospital for like 57 hours, and there wasn't nobody in there like that.
Oh, they were up and down the halls in these temporary beds, and they had oxygen bottles going everywhere. So I know what it was last January. In January, the first week in January when I was over there, and I mean, tell you, I could not breathe. You gave it to me, so.
There you go. Yeah, I had it first. I had it in the first week of that anyway. Anyway, I got to run because we're going to have Kelly Victory on here coming up pretty soon. I was in there the previous January. I tell you, there wasn't lines of people in there with that. Well, there's a first-hand report. In this January, there was, all having breathing problems. What gives? We'll go down to that. We're going to have Dr. Kelly Victory coming on when we join KMET, the Mighty Met, on this whole enchilada, and we'll get the expert opinion of, I guess it was Stephanie Tyler. I think I did I say Steven Tyler? On that. Sorry about that, Stephanie Tyler, that happens when you just glance down and read things like that without really paying attention of that. I'll just read. No one knows how parents are supposed to educate their children of schools remain closed. Yeah, what's going to happen with all this stuff, of everything? It's getting absolutely crazy what's going on out here. But I agree with you. Parents need to parent.
30 seconds.
We've got 30 seconds to go, and we'll be joining the Mighty Met on that with Dr. Kelly Victory, joining our panel of experts on that to spread you facts, not fear, on everything COVID-19. Coming up soon.
All right, here we go. 10 seconds.
MET1490am.com and download your free phone app today. IE Newswire Daily is on the air.
The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed by this station. Opinions expressed, not necessarily those of radio station KMET.
There's that funky slide guitar music that comes on every 5:30 Monday through Friday on the Mighty Met 1490 KMET. As we do everything, as we're broadcasting iNewsWire Daily on that. We had a really interesting discussion on that on the first half hour about Gavin Newsom and the $54 billion hole that he's dug us into on the deficit and that. And we played the video of the great truck driver the other day who, while Gavin was trying to be out there as a prop, using the fire department as a prop, telling us how that, and he just blasted his horn for about 30 seconds. And the great Gavin Newsom, this is his response. He walks off and gives it to the fire chief because he doesn't know how to handle the situation on that. which was absolutely funny as heck. That's what we need to do. We need to drown out more of these dingbat politicians and so-called experts that keep giving us this misinformation, or I don't know what they're doing. But we've had one expert on the situation that has stood steadfast in her opinion on things, and for my and I've checked it out nine times to Sunday on this, and I haven't found anything or any of the things she said that hasn't panned out on this whole thing. And I don't know what else to say, but she's a trauma surgeon, consultant to many corporations, and more importantly, she's been the right doctor with the right information on COVID-19, and more importantly, had guts enough to stand her ground, even though I know she's probably endured a lot of pressure on that to change her opinions or that. But Dr. Kelly Victory, welcome back to iNewsWire Daily.
Hey, great to be back with you guys, and thanks for the nice introduction, Roy. I certainly am in the minority, although I'm not the only voice of reason out there. They are far and few between, unfortunately, certainly coming from the mainstream media. It's all fear all the time, and while I'm well aware that panic sells, it certainly isn't the way to run a country, and it's not the way to manage a crisis of any sort. People tend to not make good decisions when they are in fear. People don't make good decisions when they're acting out of panic. And I really hate to see public health officials leading, quote unquote, in this way.
I couldn't agree more. And, you know, what really just boggles my mind sometimes is we can't, the politicians, the ones that made all the outlandish predictions of death, doom, and despair that was coming. This is the worst thing, the Spanish flu, yada, yada, yada. And even no matter what's happened to this point, we will never move forward in this stuff unless they just, in my opinion, unless they just come forward and say, you know what, we really blew this thing. Maybe, or show us the data or what you were doing. Either admit you were stupid or got the wrong information or what the plot was, but just say, hey, this is the reality of the situation now. Let's work to get things back together before we totally destroy everything.
No, you're spot on, Roy. And in fact, a great example of that is, now we've seen several states have the guts to open up, and these states tend to fall along political lines. They tend to be the Republican governors, whether it's in, Texas or Florida or Georgia, who are saying, look, we're opening back up. And the predictions were, oh, my gosh, you open up and we're going to see that big spike. There are going to be bodies everywhere. People are going to be dropping like flies. Well, instead, that's not what we've seen. That's not what we've seen at all. And even Dr. Deborah Birx would admit that they have seen a significant decrease in the number of new cases and in the number of deaths in those states that have gone back to work. So you would think that anyone with a modicum of self-respect would stand up and say, okay, we were wrong. We thought this was going to happen. It didn't, and maybe we can use those states as a model for how to move forward with other states. But instead, they double down, and they say now it's coming in 2 weeks. Just wait 2 more weeks. It's just around the corner, just around the bend. And at some point, even your average American with no background in science, no background in medicine or healthcare, has to begin to trust his or her own eyes and say, look, the models have been wrong. They scared the bejesus out of all of us early on, and we did what they asked us to do. President Trump said, you may recall, this began with, we're going to shelter in place for 15 days. Now they keep moving it. At some point, the average American looks around and says, this is insanity. Everything they've predicted hasn't happened. People aren't dropping like flies. The bodies aren't stacking up like cordwood. And most people not only don't know someone who got sick with coronavirus, they don't know someone who knows someone who got sick with coronavirus.
There you go. And we didn't talk about this, but you're reading my mind. Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, I think on April 21st, basically started kicking this door open and basically started opening things up. And not only did people, the experts, the health officials in there, the mayors were just going apoplectic and saying exactly the same thing, what you said. Oh, in 2 weeks, in a week or two, you're just going to see the numbers shooting through the room. There's going to, Georgia's going to fall apart. Same thing that was happening in Florida and Texas and everywhere else. And even Trump said I didn't agree with what Brian Kemp was doing. But, this is how disingenuous they are. They have now started deleting the tweets and the postings they had. They were predicting this 2 weeks ago, starting with Brian Kemp on that, or 3 weeks ago, I think now, of that, and 2 weeks ago in DeSantis and Greg Abbott and stuff like that. They're trying to cover their tracks instead of admitting, like you say, now they're just trying to kick the ball down the court or wait for this or we can't stop. Why can't you just admit, we blew this?
Absolutely, and I have not deleted. I have had no reason to delete a tweet or to take down any post. I've not. I've said from the beginning, despite suffering the slings and arrows, and this is a time of just unprecedented virtue signaling. If you don't wear a mask or if you refuse to cower inside, if you are bold enough, like I have been, to have dinner parties and cocktail parties and invite people over and say, look, I'm not inviting over people who are in high-risk groups. I'm not inviting over, people who are over the age of 75 who are with significant underlying medical conditions, those sorts of things. And I'm carrying on with my life. If you do that, you really are just a pariah. People look at you and say you're selfish or you aren't following the science. And I'm saying, no, actually, at some point, the people who look like fools, I've made the analogy before, Roy. It's sort of like if the weatherman says, it's sunny and warm, it's going to be sunny and warm this weekend, it's going to be sunny and warm, and you walk outside in the morning and it's snowing, you're the one who looks like a fool when you stand out there in your shorts and T-shirt and say, but the weatherman said it's sunny and warm. And say, at some point you got to look around and say, okay, you're looking like a fool because it's sunny and warm, despite what the model said it was going to be. The models haven't been right. The experts, I hate to say it, have been wrong. I mean, by an order of magnitude, so much so that I honestly am hard-pressed to listen to anything that follows the statement, according to Dr. Fauci.
I couldn't agree more. I've had that feeling from him since the get-go, and I mean, I never knew of this guy until, 2 months ago, that we had all this stuff up. But you made a great point. You haven't had to taken down any of your tweets or trying to scrub the things that you've said because they've all, most of the stuff and all of it, and even so the stuff that you have that will come on is probably going to be predicted to be true, and you've been rock solid on this. I want to read you a statement from epidemiologist. He posted this on that. He wrote an article a couple months ago about masks, and he updated it here May 4th. That this is a quote from M.K. Gideon. He's an epidemiologist, end quote. Mask provision is probably ineffective at preventing the transmission of respiratory diseases such as COVID-19 in the community. There is some evidence that it might be helpful for those who are very, very strictly adherent, but this is of low quality and inconsistent among trials. Thus, the current best evidence strongly argues against mask use in the general population. That was the end of his quote.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more, and I've said that from the beginning. There is absolutely not a shred of science that would indicate that it's wise for the population to be wearing masks. We generally have people, if there's an individual who is considered to be at risk, and that person has to go into an area where they would be exposed to potentially lots of other people who could be carrying a pathogen, then that person may help that person to wear a mask. It still isn't 100% by any means. But the idea of the masses of healthy people wearing masks and gloves, which just sets my hair on fire, is so insane. Furthermore, part of the function of your lungs, Roy, when you sneeze or you cough or you sigh, is part of the normal function. Your lungs are somewhat self-cleaning. We cough out things that we don't want in there. It might be something like a speck of dust or some pollen or anything else that you breathe in. Part of the normal response is to cough those things out, to sneeze them out, or to sigh and expel those things. If you are wearing a mask clapped over your mouth, all you do is breathe that item back in. So we are really limiting the ability of our own lungs to perform their normal function. In addition to exchanging oxygen, they need to be able to get rid of the stuff that you don't want sitting down there. So we are doing a lot of damage to our immune systems in many, many ways by these draconian measures, staying indoors, not exercising, not getting out in the sunlight, all of the things that we know actually enhance our own body's immune system to function at maximal capacity for our T cells, the cells that actually fight infection, to get out there and do their jobs. When you stay inside and are never exposed to anybody, when you bathe in Purell every night and try to disinfect your entire life space, okay, your immune system essentially says, well, boy, I haven't seen any new pathogens lately. Guess I can go on vacation. And your immune system starts to kind of get a little lazy. It's like anything else. It needs to be exercised regularly. And our grandmothers were really quite smart when they said, you need to eat a pound of dirt, or get a little, be exposed to a few things. That actually was wise advice. And what we're doing right now is hurting people in so many ways that I think, in addition to the devastation to the economy, we are really hurting people's immunity. We're hurting their social systems. We're hurting them psychologically. And we are doing it all on the basis of no sound science.
I've always said I'm not very smart, but I know a lot of smart people. But I am smart enough to know when somebody smart is giving me good advice and heed it of that. And you are reiterating everything that I was taught from my mother to biology class in junior high and high school, of that the virus needs you, you need the virus, and you have to have that. If you try and live in a bubble, you are eventually going to shorten your life expectancy very much because, like you said, all this stuff is going to get you. And that was my exact point of why I never wanted to wear the mask. I'm thinking, well, if I do and I'm trying to get rid of this stuff, I'm constantly breathing this stuff in back and forth. This just does not compute.
But no, and there's a reason, Roy, why your average preschool teacher isn't sick constantly, because they're exposed on a daily basis to the little petri dishes known as toddlers. And same thing with physicians. We come in contact with all kinds of things. And although you might succumb to a bad cold or get the flu like anybody else, for the most part, when you are exposed to a lot of things, you tend to have a stronger immune system. So I think that what we're doing with the masks and the gloves, and in fact, there's a great photo on MSN today of Dr. Bright, who testified in front of Congress today wearing a mask and gloves, and in the entire hearing, he keeps touching his face with his gloved hands and readjusting his mask. And I thought, for the love of God, you are a doctor, and certainly the virus isn't transmitted through the skin, so you can't pick it up through the skin of your hands. And if you touch your face or your phone or your mask or whatever else with a gloved hand, you're just as likely to transmit the virus or any other bug that way. So it's really a bit of theater for people to be walking around with these things on, and for a doctor to do it, I think is unconscionable. To scare the public into believing that they should do that, I think is unconscionable. And we really are perpetrating bad science. We're leading people to believe that a smart thing to do is to walk around with masks on and gloves on and to spray hand sanitizer all over your workstation every 15 minutes. And it doesn't make any sense at all.
And further reading, because the epidemiologist M.K. Gidney was talking about healthcare professionals, and if they're in this environment and they're putting on the proper masks and trained to use them and stuff. But this is another telling quote that came out of here, and I'm going to quote him. And while not entirely consistent, there seems to be some evidence that these pre-protocol analysis that people who wear the mask religiously may have a reduced risk for infection, although the longer the incubation period of this disease, the smaller the benefit. The big study I mentioned in Australia estimated that with a 2-day incubation period for influenza, the efficacy of the mask wearing for people who wore masks was roughly halved, which raises some questions about COVID-19, which has a 4 to 7 day incubation period in itself. I mean,
exactly. No, you're exactly right, Roy. And I hear as time goes on and things aren't as dire as the experts have wanted you to believe that they are, I hear more and more crazy things come out of the mouths of local politicians, things like we have to be, worried because we haven't eliminated the virus yet. I'm thinking, eliminated the virus? When did eliminating the virus become even part of the conversation? We have only, in the history of medicine, we have only eliminated one virus that I'm aware of, and that's smallpox, other than a couple of very highly controlled labs where it still exists. We don't eliminate viruses. Coronaviruses are incredibly common. 20 to 25% of all common colds are coronaviruses. COVID-19 is a particularly nasty one, but we didn't set out to eliminate it. So we went from trying to flatten the curve and make sure that we don't overwhelm hospitals to eliminating it. Then I hear, we can't get back to normal until we have a vaccine, one of my all-time favorites. Does anyone ever question, where's the vaccine for HIV, herpes, respiratory syncytial virus, RSV, SARS, Ebola, Coxsackie virus, norovirus? Where are the vaccines for those? There aren't any. We don't have vaccines for those things. You know how long herpes and HIV have been around? A long time. And we don't have vaccines for those. It isn't so simple. And so if your plan is don't get back to work, don't open schools, just kind of hang tight while we work on this vaccine, that I guarantee you will be the proverbial last nail in the coffin.
You're exactly right, and correct me if I'm wrong. And HIV/AIDS virus has been around for 20, 30 years. Magic 40, Johnson retired in '92, and isn't that Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx's big claim to fame is HIV? And they, in 20 or 30 years, they do not have a vaccine for it. That should send a signal to you right there, if nothing else does.
You better believe it's nearly 40 years. It was the early 80s when it was first identified. Nearly 40 years later, we do not have a vaccine. Likewise for all the others. Norovirus, which shuts down cruise ships all the time. People die of Coxsackie virus every year. There are huge outbreaks of those viruses. There are some bad viruses out there. The world is a scary, dangerous place. Unfortunately, we all signed up for that, and if we want to live and have any element of civil liberties, we have to do what we can within the normal bounds of what's acceptable for people to live their lives. People didn't work their tails off and sleepless nights and risk everything to build small businesses, to provide for their families, to get educations, to have a career, to then be told, cower inside, wear a mask until the mayor tells you can come out.
I couldn't have said it any better than that. And I mean, it just makes me, like I said, as the duct tape I'm holding here, sometimes I think I got to take this duct tape and wrap it around my head so my head doesn't explode on this. Some of the illogical stuff that comes about. But we got about a minute left, so I'm going to let you wrap it up.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I would say is I really am hopeful that people just start standing up for themselves, and as far as they can, I'm not asking people to go out there and get arrested, but I am saying as far as possible, if your church is open, if your grocery store is open, if small businesses are open, get out there, do it proudly, go to church, go to the local bar and grill, sit out on the deck if that's what they're demanding, but get out there and really try to spread some modicum of calm amongst fellow people and say, look, we are going to protect the people who are at the highest risk. We know who those folks are. Mortality for people under the age of 55 is almost zero. It is zero below the age of 21. And say, let's really stand up and tell our local politicians and these medical experts that we aren't having it anymore.
I know, well, I'm speaking for myself, but I think I'm speaking for most of my audience, too. Just thank you from the bottom of my heart for standing strong in this and giving us the real skinny on this stuff and the way it is and the way it should be, and hopefully we'll turn this tide around. We'll do it again next week. What do you say?
I'd love to. Thanks so much.
You got it. Thanks for being on, Dr. Kelly Victory, who is bringing you the stuff. So you want experts opinion. There's all sorts of them out there you can find. I'm not saying that anybody can follow any sort of protocol, and if you're uncomfortable with this stuff, I'm not saying anybody that wants to wear a mask, don't wear a mask. I'm just saying look at what the evidence shows, what the experts have written, what the studies, the double-blind studies and the protocols that everybody else has done about this stuff. There's risk factors in everything. And, everybody's free to make their judgments up and down the line on this stuff, on that. I want to do that and look for the premiere on the Set Us Free on IEN. We're going to do a premiere of a video, I think, at 7:30 today. It's the 12-minute clip, yes, of that. Yeah, blow it up on the big or the big size of it as much as you can. That's the 12-minute clip Stephanie and I did yesterday of Set Us Free, the appeal we made to the Board of Supervisors at Orange County, Riverside County, San Bernardino, and the sheriffs. That's a picture of Michelle Steele from Orange County, Jeff Hewitt of Riverside County, Kurt Hagman of San Bernardino County, Sheriffs John Barnes, Chad Bianco, and John McMahon of the aforementioned counties. They, in my opinion, they need to represent us as they were elected and take the lead and set us free. Whatever that policy takes, in my opinion, they need to say we're open, like Jeff Hewitt proposed at the county last week. We need to open this county up now. No restrictions. No, we don't care what the governor says. We're going back to the day before March 3rd, the day before the emergency order that Gavin Newsom signed, sending us down the path that we are on. And I believe, as I made the appeal to Sheriff Chad Bianco and through the email, which they all have today, and the video of that, to the other two sheriffs and the other council members in those aforementioned counties. And I believe our sheriffs should stand strong with us and say, we're done with this. We're opening up our counties. We don't care what goon squad or regulatory agency or that you're going to harass our people with. We're just not going to tolerate it. And if we have to deputize all 8 million people in these 3 counties, we will do that, and we'll see how this all works out for you, GovGav, if you try to screw with us. Because our people are hurting. You cannot, I don't know, guys like Gavin Newsom should have had to sit and listen to the 10 hours of testimony of the real world stories of how this has affected the lives of people in Riverside County. And that story multiplies by the 40 million all across the state. We cannot stand this not a second longer. And each longer we wait to delay, it's going to be that much deeper and that much harder to dig out of this $54 billion and growing hole that's in the state of California. And begging from Trump or anything else, or thinking you're going to raise taxes, or the tooth fairy's going to save us, it's not going to happen. What's going to save us is getting us back to work, back to our jobs, back to school, back to our businesses open like it was before March 3rd. We'll be back tomorrow on Fast Friday with Stephanie and with all the fun and frivolity of that, and we'll keep you all up to date on everything else. Watch the video. See ya!